IndusInd and Yes tomorrow. What's your sense in terms of how results have been till now and your expectations on the ones that I mentioned?
Yeah, so all the results we have seen so far, there are not many great surprises yet. We were expecting challenging time for the IT companies, and that's how it looks like. And if I were to see what to expect going forward, very clearly we are looking at some benefits coming out of, a sort of recovery from demonetization, and to that extent we'll have some improvement in earnings for largely consumer-facing businesses.
What's your expectation with regards to banks this time, Anand? Do you think numbers will be very steady, or should we expect, further deterioration, slowdown in credit growth, etc., etc.?
Yes, so it will be the tale of two parts, in the sense we will have retail banks and we'll have corporate banks. So there was a lot of expectations that there would be some resolution to the large NPA recognitions which already made, but the provisions need to be made. So there we will continue to see some stress in terms of more provisioning requirement for the banks which have corporate exposure and have had already recognized NPAs and as they age. For the private sector banks, which are largely retail oriented, I think we'll see improvement. So while we had some softening on the loan growth generally for the industry and more so for them due to demonetization, I think that will come back and we'll see some sort of early recovery which will then gain strength as we move forward in quarters to come.
So you like banks, private banks, you like housing finance companies, private sector NBFCs. So it's essentially just a play on sort of consumption being very strong, right? Continuing to be very strong. That's the underlying bet.
Yeah, and that's not new.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's not new. I mean, in India, consumption has been in a bull market for more than 2 decades, and that continues to remain the story. But what this particular, the retail-oriented banks and NBFC does is also benefits from a very low penetration of, loans in the household. So there's a lot of room for penetration, and to that extent, the quality of assets also been, because you've not really gone deep into, substandard households. To that extent, the retail assets, the quality issues also are not there yet, given the household is not very leveraged. So both it works in your favor, one in terms of growth and also in terms of quality of assets.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. You're underweight capital goods, utilities and metals. Just the last one, which is metals. Have you had that call for a while, Anand? Or is this after the recent run-up? Because, I mean, I've noticed many recently kind of saying that, well, maybe the best is behind now, after the rally of the last year and a half or so.
Yeah, definitely. So we were sort of underweight before we turned overweight end of last year, and in expectation of recovery in China, and obviously subsequent to that we are also expecting some infra spend in US. Look, at the end of the day, metals is not so much the India story as much it is China story, and there I believe a lot of rally and a lot of growth is behind us. We are already seeing some signs of softening, particularly in the raw material iron ore space and others. So I think a large part of the rally on metals is behind us. We might have a last leg, but we believe this is a time to take money off the table from metal stocks.
Okay. You seem to like the urban consumption theme. You have PVR in your portfolio. You like broadcasters. Take us through that.
I think these are many of the structural stories which have been playing out for some time. Obviously, the multiplex story has a lot of room to go, given the penetration is quite low in terms of number of screens per million people. So there's a lot of room for growth to continue. The content is improving very clearly. We are seeing a lot of diversification in content, because that's the key to get the occupancy going. And there we are seeing not only the Bollywood, but also we are seeing quite a few good names coming from Hollywood and from the regional movies, particularly Southern India. So I think we are seeing quite a lot of improvement in content, and that would lead to higher occupancy levels. So there will be good operating leverage playing out as far as that sector is concerned. Similarly, the broadcasters also continue to benefit from urban consumption growth, more penetration of DTH, as well as the basically pay cable and other stuff. So it's been a nice secular story going on for some years, and we believe there's still some legs to continue this growth, both in broadcasters and multiplexes.
With movie exhibitors, which you discussed right now, you own PVR. Just very briefly, if you can tell us, how will new things like video on demand, other platforms, movie watching at home, etc., really change the dynamics here? And I think we've got about 10,000 odd screens in the country now. You can look at other countries like China, etc. It's a fraction. So there is obviously, when you do that comparison, it seems like there is a large room to grow. But there are multiple other platforms now emerging. Do you think that will disrupt in any way, or not really?
So what happens in a typical pyramid, while we will keep on losing some percentages from the top towards the newer mediums, but we are seeing a lot of population of the country which is being added to the consuming class. Ditto for while the Meru cabs of the world and the Ubers of the world came in, we were believing that it will be a sort of a death of the traditional taxi business, but that's not happened. Not even with the Ubers and the Olas, we have not seen the end of easy cabs and the Meru cabs. So very typically what happens is there's so much of population at the bottom of the pyramid which is moving up and going to consume the services, which while we'll keep on losing some people at the top for the newer services. So I think the number of people being added from the bottom are much more than what we'll lose at the top.
Okay,
so we believe the growth story is going to sustain for some years before we'll have to hit and see if the other mediums are going to take away from this sector.
All right, Anand, that point is taken. Thank you very much for joining in and speaking with us and talking